The Ocean Crest Resort gleamed like a postcard dream. Glass doors shimmered in the sunlight, palm trees swayed gently in the ocean breeze, and the lobby smelled faintly of citrus and money. That particular mix found only in five-star hotels. David Cole, a tall, calm black man in his early 40s, stepped out of a taxi wearing jeans, a linen shirt, and a traveler's hat. His suitcase was modest. No designer logos, no entourage, no fanfare. He paused in front of the entrance for a moment, smiling softly. After months of policy meetings, interviews, and cameras, he finally had a few quiet days. Or so everyone thought. Because David wasn't just any guest. He was the newly appointed Minister of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, visiting the Hotel Incognito to experience it as an ordinary traveler, to see how guests, especially guests like him, were really treated. He walked to the front desk, where a young receptionist gave him a practiced, mechanical smile. "Welcome to the Ocean Crest, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," David said warmly. "Under Cole, 3 nights." She checked her computer, typing quickly. "Ah, yes, standard suite. Breakfast included." Her tone was polite, but not warm. "Perfect," David said. "Also, I was wondering, does the hotel serve local cuisine? Something traditional?" Before the receptionist could answer, a nearby waiter, dressed in a crisp white uniform, overheard and laughed softly. "Sir," he said, smirking, "we don't really do that kind of food here. Our guests prefer international fine dining." David raised an eyebrow. "Really? You don't offer dishes from the local culture?" The waiter shrugged. "It's not very popular. Our clientele expects something a bit more refined." The implication hung heavy in the air. David nodded slowly. "I see." The receptionist gave a quick, awkward smile. "We can always arrange something from the bar menu, sir. Maybe a burger?" He smiled politely. "That's all right, I'll find something nearby." As he walked away, the waiter whispered under his breath, loud enough to be heard, "Bet he's not even staying here long." David paused briefly but didn't turn around. He simply adjusted his hat and continued toward the elevator. Upstairs, his suite overlooked the ocean. The view was breathtaking, the waves glittering like silver under the sunlight. David stood by the window, hands in his pockets, and whispered to himself, "So this is how they treat their guests." He opened his laptop and typed a short note into his private report file. Staff behavior, disrespectful tone toward local and minority visitors, lack of cultural representation in dining, no inclusion training evident. He closed the file, sat down on the bed, and smiled faintly. This might be more interesting than I thought. Because what the waiter didn't know was that this ordinary tourist would soon be the man deciding whether the Ocean Crest Resort received the government's prestigious Excellence in Tourism Award and its multi-million-dollar subsidy for expansion. And David had just begun taking notes. The sun dipped below the horizon, washing the Ocean Crest Resort in amber light. Guests drifted toward the grand dining hall, chandeliers glowing, violin music whispering over the clink of crystal glasses. It was the kind of place where everyone spoke a little softer, smiled a little wider, and believed appearances mattered more than truth. David Cole walked in wearing a simple navy shirt and pressed slacks. No jewelry, no tie, nothing to announce importance. He moved with quiet confidence, scanning the room. A maitre d' greeted him at the entrance, tall, polished, and politely detached. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," David said. "Cole, room 1108. The maitre d' hesitated briefly before checking the list. Then, with a professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he gestured toward the far corner. "This way, sir. I'll seat you near the back." The back, and where the lighting dimmed, and the noise from the kitchen occasionally broke through the music. David nodded calmly. "That's fine." As he sat down, a group of wealthy guests nearby, mostly older couples in designer clothes, glanced his way briefly, then turned back to their wine, whispering. Moments later, the same waiter from earlier approached. The smirk was back. "Well, look who's dining with us tonight," he said in that tone, the one that balanced between humor and disdain. "Did you find anything on the menu that suits your taste?" David smiled politely. "I was hoping to try one of your local dishes, something traditional from this region." The waiter laughed softly, shaking his head. "Sir, like I said earlier, we don't serve That kind of food. Maybe you'd prefer something simpler. We have a steak special. It's more familiar. A couple at the next table glanced over, sensing the undertone. David didn't flinch. No worries, he said evenly. Bring me whatever you think represents this place best. Of course, the waiter replied. One steak coming up. He turned, muttering under his breath. Tourists! David sat back, calm as ever, observing everything. How the waiter smiled warmly at a white couple a few tables away. How he recommended fine wines and dessert options to them, but didn't even ask David if he wanted a drink. He opened his small leather notebook under the table and began jotting notes. Staff behavior inconsistent. Discriminatory body language. No hospitality parity. When the steak arrived, it was slightly undercooked, served without the usual side dishes the other guests received. David looked at it, smiled faintly, and said, Thank you. The waiter nodded curtly and walked off without checking back once. Half an hour later, as David was finishing, a middle-aged white couple entered. Tourists by the look of their cameras and sunburned skin. They were directed to a front table right under the chandeliers. The husband looked around and said cheerfully, Beautiful place, huh? David smiled. It is. The view's amazing. The man nodded, then lowered his voice. Food's good too. Expensive, though. Quality's supposed to match the price, David replied. The woman laughed. Well, we hope so. We're celebrating our anniversary. We came because this place got that big tourism grant last year. The one from the government? David's eyebrow lifted slightly. Oh, yes. I heard about that. The waiter passed by again, ignoring David, but stopping immediately at the couple's table. Welcome. Let me recommend our finest local seafood tonight. It's fresh and exclusive to our resort. David listened, amused. So they do serve local dishes, just not to certain guests. He waited patiently, sipping his water. Then, as the couple thanked the waiter and turned back to their menus, David quietly opened his phone and took a discreet photo of the dining hall. The spacing, the seating arrangement, the service pattern. When he stood up to leave, the waiter finally noticed. Leaving already, sir? Not satisfied? David smiled pleasantly. Oh, I'm very satisfied. You've given me a lot to think about. The waiter chuckled. Glad to hear it. Enjoy the rest of your stay. David nodded, then said softly, Oh, I will. And so will my office. The waiter frowned slightly. Your office? David just smiled. Don't worry about it. He left a generous tip, not for kindness, but for irony, and walked out. That night, in his suite, David typed another note into his report. Dining experience confirms class-based and racial bias. Lack of inclusion awareness. Guest hierarchy visibly enforced. Recommendation: initiate full compliance review before award renewal. He saved the document, closed his laptop, and stared at the ocean waves rolling against the shore. Let's see how deep this attitude runs, he murmured. Because tomorrow, he'd be meeting with the hotel's general manager, and they still didn't know who they were talking to. The next morning dawned bright and golden over the Ocean Crest Resort. From the balcony of his suite, David Cole watched the tide roll in. The ocean seemed calm, but he knew better than anyone that calm seas often hid dangerous undercurrents. He dressed simply again. Khaki pants, a white shirt, and a baseball cap. He wanted to look like any other guest. Not a man whose signature could change the future of this hotel. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with tourists checking out, bellhops moving carts of luggage, and the faint scent of fresh pastries from the cafe. David sat in the corner with a small notebook and a cup of coffee, pretending to read while he observed everything. He noticed the same pattern he had seen the night before. Smiles for the wealthy guests, indifference for the modest ones, enthusiasm for the accents that sounded rich, impatience for those that didn't. And above it all, the quiet arrogance of a staff who thought no one was watching, but someone was watching. Near the front desk, a young black couple approached, clearly tourists, judging by their backpacks and bright smiles. Hi, the woman said cheerfully. We just wanted to ask if we could store our luggage for a few hours after checkout. We have a late flight. The receptionist barely looked up. Storage is for VIP guests only, she said flatly. Oh, the woman said, surprised. We saw other guests. Policy, the receptionist interrupted. David's jaw tightened. He watched as, moments later, a wealthy white family approached with the same request. Of course, the receptionist said brightly. We'll take great care of your luggage. Enjoy the beach before your flight. David leaned back in his chair, taking a slow sip of coffee. Then he stood, walked calmly to the front desk, and smiled. Excuse me, he said gently. That couple you just turned away, they were told storage is for VIPs only? The receptionist froze, flustered. Sir, well, technically. Because I saw you offer the same service to another family just now. Her voice stammered. They're longtime guests. David nodded slowly. I see. He took out a small black pen and jotted something into his notebook. Could you please call the general manager for me? The receptionist blinked. The manager? I'm not sure if... Tell him, David said, his voice calm but firm, that an evaluator from the Department of Tourism would like a word. The woman's face turned pale. Oh, of course, sir. Right away. Within minutes, the general manager, a slick man in a tailored gray suit, appeared with a professional smile that barely hid his concern. Good morning, sir, he said warmly. I'm Mr. Avery, general manager here. I understand there's been a misunderstanding. David extended his hand. David Cole, I've been staying here for 2 days. Avery's eyes flickered briefly. Ah, yes, Mr. Cole. I hope everything has been satisfactory. David studied him for a moment before answering. That depends on what you define as satisfactory. Avery's smile faltered. I beg your pardon? David stepped slightly closer. You see, Mr. Avery, I've been observing your staff, their interactions, their tone, their priorities. And let's just say, I'm seeing a pattern, one that doesn't align with your hotel's reputation. Avery cleared his throat, uneasy. Sir, I assure you, our staff treat all guests equally. David raised an eyebrow. Do they? Because I just watched 2 couples receive very different treatment, based on nothing but appearance. The manager's composure cracked for a split second. Perhaps a misunderstanding, sir. Perhaps, David said evenly. But you see, I didn't come here for personal leisure. Avery frowned. I'm not sure I follow. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, embossed credential card, dark blue with a golden seal. The manager's eyes widened. David Cole, Minister of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Avery's color drained. Sir, David held up a hand. Save it. I came here incognito to see how your resort treats guests. All guests. What I've seen is entitlement, bias, and a lack of cultural respect. And that's not tourism excellence. That's failure. Avery swallowed hard. Mr. Cole, please, if I had known... That's the point, David interrupted sharply. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with dignity. The lobby had gone quiet. Staff members nearby stopped pretending not to listen. David took a deep breath, softening his tone slightly. I'll be submitting my report to the review board. You may want to start preparing your explanation. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Your waiter in the restaurant? Tell him the man he laughed at last night will be deciding whether this hotel receives another government grant. Avery's face turned ashen. Sir, please allow me to... But David was already walking toward the elevator, calm and steady, the whisper of justice trailing in his wake. Back in his suite, he typed his next entry. Formal inspection initiated. Manager defensive. Staff behavior confirms systemic bias. Recommendation? Suspend funding pending corrective action and cultural retraining. He saved the document and leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. For the first time since arriving, the mask was off, and soon the entire hotel would know exactly who he was and what their behavior had cost them. By noon, the Ocean Crest Resort was humming with quiet panic. News traveled fast in places built on gossip, and faster still when fear was involved. Whispers moved through the hallways like a gust of wind. Did you hear? That guest in 1108? He's not just a tourist. He's some kind of government official. No, not just official. The Minister of Tourism. Each retelling grew more dramatic, until the staff moved like ghosts. Polite smiles stretched tight, eyes wide, waiting for orders from above. Inside the manager's office, Mr. Avery sat pale and sweating, tapping his pen against the desk, as the hotel's owners barked through the speakerphone. "Do you understand what's at stake?" a voice thundered. "If the minister reports bias or misconduct, we could lose our five-star certification and our grant." "I'm aware," Avery said quickly. "We're handling it. He's still here. I'll speak with him again this afternoon." "You'd better," the voice snapped, before the line went dead. Avery leaned back, rubbing his temples. He had built his career on charm and control, and now both had deserted him. Meanwhile, in the staff cafeteria, the waiter from earlier, Ethan, sat frozen at the corner table, staring at his untouched coffee. The head waitress whispered to him urgently, "They're saying that tourist you laughed at. He's the minister. Like, the minister." Ethan's face went white. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking," she hissed. "The manager's in meltdown mode. Everyone's saying you're the reason he's here." He gripped the table, knuckles pale. "No. No way. How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't supposed to assume," she said coldly, and walked off. For the first time, Ethan felt the crushing weight of what he'd done. Not just the insult, but the realization that it had never even occurred to him to treat the man differently. Upstairs, David Cole sat at his desk, calmly finishing his report. He could feel the shift in the air, the sudden politeness from every passing staff member, the nervous greetings, the overdone smiles. The same people who had looked down on him 2 days ago were now tripping over themselves to appear respectful. He sighed, closing his laptop. Too little, too late. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," he said. The door opened and Mr. Avery stepped inside, smiling stiffly. "Minister Cole, thank you for taking the time to meet with me again." David gestured toward the chair. "Please sit." Avery sat, clasping his hands tightly. "Sir, I'd like to sincerely apologize for the incidents that occurred during your stay. Our staff's behavior does not reflect the values of the Ocean Crest." David regarded him silently for a moment. "You know, Mr. Avery, I've been told that before. At restaurants, airports, hotels. It's always the same line." The manager's throat bobbed. "I understand, sir, but we're willing to make changes. Training programs, public statements." David leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Mr. Avery, would any of that have happened if you hadn't found out who I was?" Avery's mouth opened, then closed again. "I didn't think so," David said quietly. The silence stretched. Finally, Avery said, "If there's any way we can make this right," David stood, cutting him off. "What's done is done. My report will reflect the truth. Not what you say, but what I've seen." Avery's voice cracked slightly. "Please, Minister, this hotel employs over 200 people. One bad review—" David turned to him, his voice low but sharp. "One bad attitude nearly cost you your reputation. Don't confuse the two." The manager fell silent. An hour later, David went down to the lobby to check out. As he approached the desk, every eye in the room turned to him. The air was thick with tension. The same receptionist who had once dismissed him now smiled nervously. "Good afternoon, Minister Cole. We hope you've had a pleasant stay." David looked at her evenly. "Pleasant? No, but I've had an educational one." She swallowed hard, sliding the receipt across the counter with trembling hands. As he took it, he turned, and there, a few feet away, stood Ethan, the waiter, his expression pale and anxious. "Minister Cole," Ethan said quietly, stepping forward. "I just wanted to apologize for how I treated you. I was wrong." David looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment the anger faded, replaced by something else. Disappointment. He spoke softly. "Do you know what hurts most about prejudice, Mr. Ethan?" Ethan shook his head. "It's not the words," David said. "It's how natural it feels to the person saying them." Ethan's eyes lowered in shame. David nodded once. "Learn from this, because next time, it might not be me." He turned toward the exit, suitcase in hand, and as the doors opened and the sunlight spilled in, every person in that lobby felt the weight of silence, the kind that lingers long after a storm passes. Outside, David paused for one last look at the Grand Resort. A beautiful building, elegant, expensive, and utterly hollow inside. He stepped into his car, the driver opening the door respectfully. "Back to the Capitol, Minister?" "Yes," David said softly. It's time to clean up the industry. The car pulled away, leaving the ocean crest shimmering behind him, a monument to appearances about to face its reckoning.